Welcome back, guys. Tonight, I bring you 5 more true scary stories from the Let's Not Meet Reddit. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and let the darkness take hold. Story number 1. A regular customer. I'm a waitress at a local Italian restaurant that does deliveries and pickups. One day, I would say maybe a year ago, a man came in to place a carry-out order. A girl I work with noticed him walking up to the door and asked me if I would take care of him. I said yes, not really thinking anything of it, and she walked back to the kitchen. He came in, and I could see why she asked me to service him. He immediately gave me the creeps. He was an older man, short and stout, wearing a big coat and a winter hat. He reeked like someone who had smoked an entire pack of cigarettes while walking through piles of cow shit. Thinking of it now in my apartment all alone, I can still smell him. What really scared me was the way he stared into my face. Chin turned down towards his chest, looking up at me through his eyebrows. The stare made me feel like he was thinking of every possible way to torture me. He didn't say much, just sort of growled his order at me. He paid and waited behind the counter for his pizza to take home. He would pace, with his hands locked behind his back, while never shaking that stare. Even when he would turn to pace the other way, he never shook his glance away from me, even for a second. Being that I'm working behind this counter, I can't really go anywhere in case someone calls or comes in to get their orders. So I just stood there watching the clock, waiting for his order to be done so he could leave. Once he was finally gone, I asked my coworker if she knew anything about him and why she wanted me to take care of him. She told me that he gives her the creeps and he was a registered sex offender, but never went into the details of the charge, and honestly, I don't ever want to know. I still thought about him the rest of the day, looked twice before getting into my car at the end of the night, but I soon forgot about him. Unfortunately, that wasn't the last time I saw him. He began to come in very frequently. At first, maybe once every other week, then every week, then every day. Every time he would order the same thing and begin his pacing with that burning stare. Every chance I could run to the kitchen or get away from the counter, I would. My coworkers would make jokes about how much he liked me, saying he has never stared that hard at another worker that way before. These jokes didn't make me feel any better, to say the least. The jokes halted when we noticed his pattern. We noticed the only days he would come in would be when I was working. We started to suspect that he recognized my car. I never had the same schedule, but I always parked in the same spot in a very open parking lot, so you would always be able to tell who was there if you knew their car. The shifts that I work were a little strange as well. There's a very, very dead time in the day where we cut half the staff, giving us breaks that are a couple of hours long. He begins to come in sometimes twice a day if I was working. He would come in while I would work my morning shift and then come in again in my evening shift. While maybe it was just crazy coincidence, nevertheless, it freaked me out. One night after working a double shift on a Saturday, I had walked out to my old car, which I never locked. 3 out of the 4 doors on my car door were broken in some way, so it was just easier to keep them all unlocked. And I can admit, that car was a shitbox, so no one would even dare to have stolen it, so I never worried about it. Until this particular night. I got into my car and immediately noticed a stench. My car reeked exactly like the man. The same distinct smell of non-menthol cigarettes and cow shit was all around me. I'm completely convinced that man had been in my car that day. Since then, I had someone escort me to my car every night for a while. I haven't seen that man since last year. I hope you've taken your business elsewhere, and please, let's not meet again. Number 2. My brother and I were almost kidnapped by hillbillies in Walmart when I was 10. So this happened 13 years ago. I was 10 at the time, my brother was 8. We just moved up to a new town that year, and the Walmart here had this sweet arcade up near the service desk. So every time my parents would bring us grocery shopping, they'd give us each a few dollars and let us play in the arcade. The town had an incredibly low crime rate, and the arcade is at the front of the store where dozens of people are checking out. So what could possibly go wrong? My brother is playing the claw machine while I'm standing on the side of the machine trying to help him angle the claw perfectly above the stuffed animal he is trying to get. Suddenly, this random hillbilly walks up to the claw machine next to us, inserts a quarter, and begins moving the claw around. But for most of the time, he's making eye contact with my brother and smiling, not even watching the game. He's not talking to us, just staring and smiling. He has a long, thin, brown and silver ponytail. At the base of his skull, a camo trucker hat, and a long, scraggly beard. I remember vividly the way he smelled. Stale beer, ashtray, and something that smelled like sweet yet sour dirt. He tries making small talk with my brother and I, who were raised to be aware of strangers but still be polite. Eventually, we get bored of the game we're playing and I usher my brother to follow me to a new game on the opposite side of the arcade. A few minutes later, the man follows us, stationing himself once again at the claw machine next to us. At some point, an overweight lady walks in and says to the hillbilly, "What are you doing to these little kids?" and snickers at me. He replies, "I'm trying to win them some stuffed animals." She then begins playing the claw machine on the other side of us, so that my brother and I are sandwiched between these two strange hillbillies. Comment comes across as weird to me because previously I thought that he was maybe trying to win something for his kids, but the entire time he'd just been following my brother and I from game to game trying to win us toys. This has been going on for maybe 20 minutes at this point. They followed us to several different machines and spent a lot of money. The games were all 25 cents per play. Each time my brother and I switched machines, they'd follow us. The hillbilly says to the lady, "I'm out of money. You got any?" She says, "Nah, I'm broke too." My brother says, "I have $1 still." Now this is the part that really scared me. I remember listening to these two talk about some weird things with us, asking if I had a boyfriend, asking where we went to school, where our parents work, asking us if we've ever done drugs, etc., etc. But when my brother said he had $1, she responded with the most terrifying thing I'd heard from them yet. The woman suddenly burst out, "Well shit, give it to him, boy!" Her face was red. The tone in which she shouted was so ear-piercing and gut-wrenching that I could feel the blood drain from my face. My brother looked like he was about to cry. He hands her the $1 and her face lights up. She laughs it off, almost like she's trying to make it seem like she was joking when she yelled at us. My father walked up a couple minutes later as I turned to tell him that these people had spent close to $15 to win toys for us. They leave hurriedly before he gets a good look at them. My dad is livid. He takes us up to the front desk and tells them what I told him, and they make an announcement on the intercom to keep an eye out for these people and to report to an employee if they see him. Then they call the police. I don't actually remember this part or much of anything after my father arrives, but this is what he told me. They never did find the couple. The police reviewed security cameras, too blurry to make out any physical details, and told my parents that the couple left the store immediately after my father showed up without any groceries. Every time I see a man or a woman in Walmart that looks as I remember them, I get anxiety and try to avoid them. So, to the hillbilly couple lurking in Walmart, I hope to never, ever meet you again. Number 3. I was stalked at work. I've had a stalker for over 2 years. I, a 27 female, have worked with people with disabilities since I was 19. I was born with a rare genetic condition, shout out to other zebras, and have been using my experience as a radical disability activist and advocate to help other people with disabilities in my community. During my time working in the disability community, I have been sexually harassed and assaulted several times by both men and women, physically assaulted and stalked more than once. When I first started working with the organization I was working with, my best friend's older brother, her older sister, and several of her aunts, uncles, and cousins. So in the beginning, I always felt safe, like people would do anything to keep the creeps away from me, and they would have. However, after several years, all my close friends slowly started leaving. Flash forward to a couple of years ago when my most closest of friends were all gone, leaving me, one of the most experienced and senior staff members, including all of management and the board of directors. I've had a lot of bad experiences these past 2 years with the stuff stated above, but the worst part has been the lack of support from management. So within the last few years, a guy, a client that we'll call Leonard, 50s male, started to chat with me at community events. We often have parties or events that we invite the entire community to. The first moment I met Leonard, I experienced chills creeping down my spine. Something about the way he looked at me has always made me super uncomfortable, to the point that I will literally do anything to get away from him, including helping folks to the bathroom. He's a really short white guy with shocking white hair and these clear blue eyes that are just empty. He'll always really smile and soft spoke. He started off innocent enough. He would corner me at parties and talk until I found a reason to slip away. But at some point, he managed to get my personal cell phone number from a coworker, still don't know who, and started calling me late at night and leaving long rambling messages. I never answered the phone, and after a while he stopped. He would still periodically call me though, despite me asking him politely in person to stop. He started cornering me in the office too, when no one was around, so I had a difficult time getting away from him. Every time he cornered me, he would grab my arm or shoulder so I couldn't leave. More recently, like right before lockdown, he'd start calling the office and leaving messages on my work phone after hours. He wasn't even someone I personally worked with. I asked my coworker who did work with him to please ask him to stop, which she did. She spoke to him several times, but he only would ever stop for a week or two, and he always made a point to come around and apologize directly to me, which almost always made me more uncomfortable. It started to get really bad about 3 weeks before I started working from home. He would forget his appointments, which were purposely set on the day of the week that I wasn't working in the office. He would come in the next day when he knew I was working. Then he figured out when I got off and would come to meet me with my coworker right before I got off work and waited around till my shift ended. He started giving me little gifts, which I always refused. Every time he would get really offended, so then he started writing me poetry. Instead of just handing it to me, he would grab me and read over my shoulder and point out at what every single line meant. I always tried to get other coworkers to help me, but no one saw anything as weird or bad or unsafe, despite the warning bells going off in my head. Then one day he cornered me and said he wanted to take me to the train station, because I usually walked. I asked him if he meant he wanted to walk me the 2 blocks. He shook his head and said, "No, I want to take you in my car so I can keep a better eye on you." It gave me chills. I told him no, but he kept insisting that it would happen before he finally left. I'm a tiny petite person, so the idea that he was following me long enough to know exactly which train station I went to and the line I got on, there are several different lines going in several different directions, and even the direction I was going really freaked me out. Enough to double up on the defensive measures I normally keep on me, including pepper spray and a taser. I told everyone. I told supervisors, HR, the associate director, everyone I could think of. I had meetings with my direct supervisor where I explained everything that happened and why he was giving me the creeps, but they all just brushed it off. And one manager in particular said I was being too dramatic and that he was just a sweet older man doing nothing to harm anyone, until the next time he came around. I told a couple of my coworkers, J and P, 28 male and 26 male, and they both agreed that one of them would always walk me out from now on. On cue, Leonard waited around until after I got off, but J and P, who said they'd look out for me, were both super busy, so the associate director said he would walk me out, still not believing it was a big deal. We started walking and chatting like old friends, and the whole time Leonard followed us. The associate director had to literally yell at him to finally get Leonard to leave. Right then, he finally realized how serious the situation was getting. The next day, one of the managers, who was super rude and dismissive about the whole situation, pulled me into her office and profusely apologized. After Leonard was yelled at and went back to the office, the manager had a conversation with him that really creeped her out on my behalf. Apparently, he was saying things like, "My relationship with OP is ours and has nothing to do with the organization. You have no right to tell me how to behave around OP. She likes me and likes what I'm doing. I'm not making OP uncomfortable. She needs me to watch out for her." The same day, the entire management team apologized for not taking immediate action. especially since this is not the first time stuff like this has happened to me. I just asked that from now on I have absolutely no contact with him. I reiterated several times that I absolutely do not want an apology. I want nothing. Since then, I've learned that Leonard has harassed and assaulted an old coworker who had to file a restraining order against him. This was told to me by the manager who originally dismissed my claims. She had dealt with the other situation, yet nothing was told to any of the other staff about this behavior. Not only that, she berated me in front of other staff for speaking out about my experience, saying it wasn't that big of a deal even though she knew it had been done before. If I never have to see that guy again, I will be eternally grateful. The situation was never fully resolved before lockdown. I'm very thankful I have been able to work from home, but now I'm not sure how to proceed after restrictions are lifted and I have to start going back in again. I was thinking about filing a restraining order. My husband and family really want me to, but I pretty much figured no one will take me seriously. Number 4. To the creep who tried to break into my car while I was alone in it. I live in a fairly large town and the crime rate is pretty low, so back to the story. I'm a teenager, and due to this quarantine, I haven't been able to get out and meet my friends as much as I'd like to. So when my mom told me that she was going out and she'd not hate some company, I jumped at the chance. I'm fairly popular in my school, and I do have a lot of friends, and not meeting them has had a toll on my life, and I'd love to meet them once all of this is over, but the rules in town regarding quarantine are pretty strict, so I can't really meet them until the count of people affected in our area goes down. We have a lot of grocery shops in this town, and the one where we go to is pretty big. My mom and I decided to go there, and I waited in the car because I didn't really feel like going inside. I'm kind of a germaphobe. I have no problem roaming around in the streets where I live, but going to a shop where so many people have been during the pandemic seemed very weird to me. I know I might be coming off as a spoiled brat, but that's just how I am, and that's just how I've been my entire life. My mom went inside the store and she began the most overprotective mom, stopped the car keys with her and locked the car, which is now I'm very, very thankful for. Okay, so as most cars have a very thick window and you can't hear the person on the other side of the window saying anything unless they're shouting, this is important for later. My mom told me that it would take her about 15 to 20 minutes to get all of the supplies that we needed. I didn't mind that because I got to blast my music in the car. She doesn't allow that. After about 5 minutes after she left, I was blasting the music in the car. She called me and she told me that there was a big line in the grocery stock, so she needed some 10 to 15 minutes extra, and again, I did not mind because I got to blast my music and that's all I need. 10 minutes after that, I had my eyes closed and I heard tapping. First I dismissed it as some beats I didn't catch in the song when I heard it first, but then the tapping got frantic. Then I realized that someone was tapping on my window. I thought it was my mom and she dropped her keys somewhere and she couldn't get into the car or she wanted something. But when I opened my eyes to see who it was a tall guy about 6 foot tall. He was white and looked like he was high on drugs. I turned off the music and I shouted, because of the window thing, "Hey, can I help you?" He didn't respond and I said it again because I thought he couldn't hear me at first. And then the guy started shouting at me at the top of his lungs, "Let me in! Let me in, you bitch!" I said, "Let me the fuck in!" I was in such a shock because I'd never seen this man in my entire life and I already had my phone on me. I was starting to dial my mom's number. Then what he did next will give me goosebumps for the rest of my life. He said, "Honey, let me in. Darling, I promise I won't hurt you or your family. Let me in, sweetie." In a loud but very calm and sweet voice, like you would talk to a toddler when he's making a mess. I was shaking so hard that I could not dial the correct number to my mom's phone, and I started searching for a contact. I know, very, very dumb considering the fact that there's a psychopath who's about to kill me outside my goddamn window. Then he started screaming in, "You bitch, I'll make sure to fucking kill you. You're going to regret not letting me in," and started banging his whole body on the window. I know that he could not get into the vehicle because the windows are very secure and he was a thin man in his late 40s, and I was pretty sure that he could not get into the car without me unlocking the door. I dialed my mom and he was still screaming at the top of his lungs, calling me every single swear word there is, in the whole world. My mom heard and she came running outside and she saw the psychopath trying to hurt her daughter and she went off. She started hitting him with the stuff that she had bought from inside the store, and when one of the employees heard the commotion and decided to step in, the police were called and the employee held the man in place. I was crying and shaking and having a full-on anxiety attack at the moment. The police came in about 5 minutes and he was arrested, and we later found out that he was taking large doses of heroin. He had an accident some 10 years ago before, and because of the painkillers he had been addicted to the drugs from that time. That shit was the scariest thing I've ever seen. The way he said it, that he wouldn't hurt me or my family, only if I let him in. He's in jail now. So to the weird, ugly creep who tried to break into my car, let's never meet again. Number 5. Man in the Window. Sorry up front, my storytelling is pretty subpar in comparison to a lot of posts I've read on here previously. Also, try not to judge, as I feel now that this situation wasn't handled how it probably should have been. So this encounter took place approximately 10 years ago. I was 15 and on top of the world. Like others feel around that age, I was absolutely invincible. At 15, I was pretty big. I was about 6 foot, 200 pounds of strong and stupid. You'd think I'd be a pretty terrible target, right? This man did not agree. I was from a suburban area where part of my town was divided into a grid, approximately 8 blocks long and 8 blocks wide. Me and my friend Jesse were walking home from another friend's house who lives on almost the exact opposite corner of the development from me. We were on the way home, and as usual, I walked him to his house, and then I walked to mine. We noticed a big blue Ford Bronco was circling the blocks throughout our walk, but didn't really think anything of it. We got to this house, and we hadn't seen the truck for a few blocks. I assumed I had nothing to worry about. I get another 2 blocks or so, and I see the truck again. He was parked on the side of the road, but you couldn't hear his truck was still running. He followed me all the way home, but was sure not to take the exact same route. I got to my front porch and could see he's parked just a few houses down on the same side of the street. I mentioned it to my dad, an absolute mammoth of a man, and he went out to see the truck. He saw it and started walking down to it when it took off. 2 weeks go by and I haven't seen the Bronco again. This walk home was almost a daily routine at this point. We had a snow day from school and just me and my sister were home. I'm playing on the computer when something catches my eye. Directly to my right is a window and there's a man standing in it. Now, this window's on the first floor, but still, approximately 5.5 feet off the ground, bi-level house, this man's entire head and body still fills the window. He's got curly hair, a full beard, and looks to be pretty fat as he fills almost the whole window. We locked eyes and I ran out to confront him. Again, more brawn than brain, kinda still true to this day. He ran off down the street to the same blue Bronco parked in almost the same spot as last time. He pulled off faster than I could catch him. This time I called the cops. I gave them as much information as I could, and basically all they said was they'd keep an eye out for him. I showed them where he was, and they were able to confirm it by footprints in the snow leading to and away from the window. Now what it had me a bit concerned was I wore a 12 size shoe. My dad, who is significantly larger than me at this point, wore a 14, and his shoes were a bit smaller than the imprints in the snow. Fine then. We're fucking with Sasquatch now. A few weeks go by and there hasn't been any more weird encounters. My head's on a swivel every time I'm out of the house. I don't want to say that I was looking for a problem at this point, but I was. I was kinda hoping that this dude would show up and try something. I was ready for it. I wasn't ready. Me and Jesse were walking home from the same friend's house one night, and we saw this Bronco again. Fuck it. We're 2 young, fit, and stupid dudes, so we're gonna trap him. We went completely out of our way to go to the only dead end in the development to try to get him once we confirmed he was following us. You'd never know it was a dead end unless you knew the area, because there were never and still aren't any dead ends or no outlet signs. I guess he had an idea to what we were doing because he knew where we both lived. He didn't follow us down. We thought that it was the perfect plan because of how many moves he'd have to make to turn around. Several cars parked on the street, and it's not a cul-de-sac, just a road with no outlet, and thought we could run up on him when he tried to back out. He outsmarted us that day. The next day, on the same trip from the same friend's house, on the same road, we see him again. I walk my friend home and figure, fuck it, I'm fine. I dare this dude to come out at me. And he didn't. This happened several more times over the next week or two until the guy decided to make his move. I was on my way home after leaving Jesse at his house. I got another block before I saw the truck. I'm walking perpendicular to his truck when as soon as I'm in his path, he turns on his lights. Fuck. I ran up the few blocks to my house and waited on the porch to see where he was and what he was doing. This time he stayed put just a few houses down. I told my dad again and he went out to see. Truck's still there. Me and my dad start walking down to the truck and it's still not moving. This ballsy shit has the audacity to get out of his truck to confront us. Terrible idea. He gets out when my dad is still 25 feet from the truck. He's an absolutely enormous man. I guess my dad's about 6'4", right under 300 pounds with a body built like a Bud Light and manual labor. He's a solid don't fuck with that dude. But this guy still had size on him. What I saw next was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life. So my dad's not much of a talker, and at this point he's already got a problem with this guy. The guy gets out of his truck with the most sadistic smile on his face. My first thought was this guy had a gun. I yelled to my dad that he might have a gun, and all he yelled back was, "I've got it." Well, he definitely had it. They walked up to each other, and before a word was even said, my dad swung. Now I can tell you when somebody's out after they've been hit, and this dude was done. Before he even started to crumple, my dad hit him again. He hit his truck and hit the ground. Whoever said the bigger they are, the harder they fall was absolutely right. I never saw the guy again. And after just moving back into my parents' old house with my young son, I never hope I do. So, big dude with the blue Ford Bronco, let's never meet again. Hey guys, your friendly neighborhood gay cop here. Thank you for tuning in, as always, and I really appreciate it. This is my second video, and I want you guys just to let me know how I did, and if you have any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I should be uploading probably around Thursday or Friday of this upcoming week. Until then, guys, have a wonderful week, and always remember, let the darkness take hold.